Welcome to Leading People with me, Jerry Murray. This episode of Leading People is brought to you by Wide Circle, helping you make better talent decisions. To learn more, visit widecircle.eu. That's widecircle.eu. Leading People is a podcast which features insightful conversations with leading people about leading people. Yes, that's a play on words. In each episode, you get tips from leading people such as CEOs, HR professionals, authors, and thought leaders on all aspects of leading people, including how to attract, engage, develop, and grow talent to build successful organizations. And we provide insights on how to lead yourself so you can consistently perform at your best. In this episode, I chat with author and executive leadership coach Rebecca Watson. We cover quite a lot in our conversation, including the role that energy plays in leadership, when leaders need coaching skills, how to improve employee engagement, the challenges that women face in leadership roles, and how to spot the signs of potential burnout and remain resilient in these COVID times. Rebecca Watson, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Jerry. Nice to be here.
Yeah, it's great to see you after all these years. It's a while since we used to be sharing training rooms and that as participants, and way back in the early mid-2000s, I believe, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's great to have you on the show. And I think for our listeners, viewers, might be nice for them to get to know you a little bit. Some of them may know you, for those who may not. But let's just do it in such a way that, how did you get here? What is there a particular person, place, or event, or something that stands out on your journey to where you are today? Or was there this epiphany moment that went, oh my God, I have to do this now? And maybe just talk about that, and then maybe you can segue into how you then came eventually to write some books, and we'll take the conversation from there. So over to you.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't have one big epiphany. I started my career as a commercial lawyer in London, and through several different moves, I learnt NLP. I was living in Australia. I was working as a lawyer for a power station, and my boss said, I think you need a course, an influencing course, because I looked very young for my age. I was British, female, trying to influence these senior directors of a power station to use me as their in-house lawyer. So he sent me on a course, and it turned out to be NLP practitioner, which on that course, the trainer kept saying to me, you should be a coach. And, at that time, I'd go to parties and people didn't even know what a coach was. They thought it was a coach driver. So I carried on in law, and then I became a change management consultant when I came back to London, and bizarrely ended up as a coach anyway. I think it was subliminally planted by my trainer, my NLP trainer back in Australia. But I just followed my heart, Jerry. I thought, I don't like this aspect of law. I like this part. So that was more of the change management. Then when I went into change management as a consultant, HMRC was my big client. And actually, we could throw as many consultants onto that project as we liked, and it was the leadership that was in need of some support. So I went to my MD and I said, look, let me work with the leaders. I have this training, and I just basically started coaching them. They loved it. And then my MD said, well, we don't do coaching here, we just do consulting. So I said, well, I really want to coach, and they really like the coaching. If I leave, can I take them as my client? So I set up a coaching practice with HMRC as my first client. And, it just happened. I didn't really have any plan. And I, for the first couple of years, kept thinking, I'm going to get found out and I'll have to get a proper job again. But that's over 10 years ago. And here I am, just having worked with many, many leaders around the world, in all different sectors, not just CEOs, but also not-for-profit, head mistresses, headmasters. So it's been a great journey. And on that journey, I knew I had a book in me. They say everyone's got one book at least in them. And in order to not write the book that my second book was the book that was my main book. But in order to not write that, I wrote my first one. So I didn't have the courage to really put out there what I wanted to in my heart of hearts. So I wrote the first book, which is just a very basic handbook for leaders. That I was running a team coaching program for very senior leaders and helping them create high-performing teams. And then people further down in the organisation wanted me to come and help them, but it just wasn't worth the organisation paying my rates for me to work at that level. So I just put that program into a book. And that's my first book. So it's very practical, very, all my exercises. And the second book, I was actually going through a divorce, and I was really had really hit rock bottom. And I remember just sort of saying to someone, I mean, I'm not religious, but I just was saying in my head to someone, just tell me what to do. And every time I got this voice back, which just said, write your book. And I literally would ask and ask. And in the end, the voice turned into quite a parental, just write your book. It's not going to change. The answer isn't going to change. So right at a personal crisis, I took a month off, and it was in August, and I was living in London then, and I'd just go to various nice cafes. And I downloaded that book in about a month. And then it took a following year to, edit it, get it into some order, make it reasonable. But it was as if I just channeled it, really. So that's, from there, I mean, that was 2014, I think that book was published, so many years ago. But it was really tapping into this wisdom about energetic fields. And I've used that wisdom and that knowledge of the fact that everything is just energy. I've used that in my coaching and working with top teams to great effect. So wherever that intelligence came from, I bless it, because it didn't come from me, it came through me, if you like.
Right, so we'll need to unpack some of that now for those listening or watching this. And I know that you'll be sharing some useful tips along the way. Mm-hmm. And it always, just reflecting what you said there before we get into that, I've run personal development seminars now since the mid-2000s, and so many people come looking for the answer, and they go to mine, they go to somebody else's, and the answer is always in the same place, isn't it? It's always inside. It's a sort of look of stunned shock and horror, and I go, yeah, it's always been there. Wow. Before we go to the energetic, I wanted to pick up on something you talked about, how you evolved into this world of leadership coaching. And what are some of the qualities? I mean, you were saying I kind of found myself there, and, what are some of the qualities, reflecting back, that make a great leadership coach? You don't have to share them all. I'm sure some of them are in your book. But what are some of the things that you think are so fundamental to anybody who wants to work in this field, or anybody who's evaluating the quality of the coaching they're getting from maybe as a leader?
Yeah, it's a great question, because I think we really need a lot of evaluation. I think, number one, you have to understand the field of leadership. I'd come out of the corporate world. I'd been working with directors and CEOs as a lawyer, because I was helping them buy or sell their companies. So I do think you need to understand what it's like for them in their world. You have to come from that world. So I think that's key. And then I think the generic skills that make a good coach then come into play, which is being able to be present with someone without any of your own thoughts in your head, being really present and listening. And listening with not just your ears, listening with your whole body, seeing as they talk how they shift a little part of their body, or you move their hand to a place on their body, or that people give signals all of the time. And for me, I use my own physical body to tap into how it feels to be with this person as they're talking, and where is their energy, and is it what I'd call grounded and centered, or is it, rising up and out of them and scattered? And we innately have a concept of energy as humans. It's embedded in our language, but it's just not made that conscious. So I think using that skill, it has made a difference for my coaching practice, as opposed to just asking the right questions. Obviously, I have a coaching diploma. There's the basics. You have to know. I'm cutting it very short here because it's a whole profession and there's a lot to it. But I think that's the USP, understanding that this person in front of you is not just a brain in a body. There's energy flowing in them, through them, from other people, from events, from the past. And for me, they're part of a bigger system. So, yeah, that's what I would say.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because, I personally agree with you. There may be some people out there still wondering what this is all about.
Yes.
Yeah, I used to teach. I did a lot of NLP teaching over the years. I haven't done so much practitioner training this last while. And, we used to teach the basics of rapport. And one of the things I realized very early on was that you have all these techniques that you'll find in books about mirroring, matching, etc. Actually, rapport is an energy field. It's when the field that you occupy with the other person somehow feels good. And you feel that you're in a common energy field. And everything else is sort of derived from that, anything else, because we naturally can go into rapport with people, and it is that energetic connection. So let's now take that energetic. So apart from being an author and a leadership coach, you run retreats. You mentioned that you do yoga, and you're a strong believer in this whole aspect of holism, and I suppose the whole systemic way in which things work. And I really liked I saw something you wrote about when you're working with a team. It's really a system, and it's like all systems, the interaction and relationships between those parts are so critical to how that team functions. So let's get into that world there. And how do you present the energetic work to your clients in a way that, they can maybe overcome some skepticism or hesitancy, and a way that's comfortable enough for them to be able to embrace it? And I use that word embrace in an energetic way.
Yes. Well, it's interesting because I'm not a trainer, so I'm not giving them information about energetic fields. I'm not really going in telling them what my beliefs are around this topic. I'm helping them solve a very practical problem that they might have right now. And that might be, we want to change the culture of our organization, or we've got this problem often in the culture, or I have someone in my team that I don't really get on with, or I need to get a higher performance out of someone or a team, or reach a project goal. There's always something that they want. And that's where I start, because that's my value to them, is to help them remove the blocks to getting what they want to achieve. So the energetic work is just one of the tools in my toolkit. And I might not even use the word energetic or energy. I might just say to a client, as you're talking, I'm noticing that my energy is my breath has come very high up in my chest now, and I'm feeling a bit anxious too. Do you feel anxious? And they'll say, yeah, actually, I feel quite stressed when I talk about this topic. So I am just trying to match my energy to theirs so that I can understand where they're at and what they might need from me. And then equally it's in NLP, as you know, Jerry, pace and lead. So I'm matching where they are so I can get a feel for what's going on for them, what's important to them, and then I can do some sort of grounding. I do quite a lot of breath work and grounding with my clients. I just say, let's just ground for a minute. Say, let's just sit with our feet flat on the floor, palms open, resting on the thighs, straight back. And I'll do the same. So we both are doing this. And I'll say it's just good before we have this discussion to just get into a good state and ground. And then I get, we both close our eyes, we take a deep breath, and we just put our focus on the breath and inside the body for just 1 or 2 minutes. And often with a very busy CEO, when we come out of that, I'll say, how long do you think that took? And often my clients were like, I don't know, 5-10 minutes? I'm like, no, 1 minute, 40 seconds. That's what it took. And now they're in a completely different space and they're connected to their body. And, why that's so important for me is we filter things through our body. So we have a lot of information in the body and the unconscious mind that is stored in the body. All this mega bits of data is also, we're like a massive computer system. If we only use the executive function of the brain, which is, what we're doing if we disconnect from the body, we're only using, I don't know, I think it's 20 million megabits of data per second we can filter through that, which sounds a lot, but I think it's something like 400 billion megabits of data come in through the body, through all of our senses every second. So, yeah.
So I think that's great advice for people who facilitate or train out there, who often, I've had conversations with people over the years saying, but how do you actually, I can see the value of this, but how do you actually do it? It's interesting. I do exactly the same thing. I never tell people that we're going to do anything. I would never tell them we're going to do mindfulness or anything. I just say we're going to sit quietly now and I'm going to give you some guided instructions, and just whatever happens will happen. And, it's a bit that feeling. Some of them go, why did you stop? You go, because we're going to do something else. But I was really enjoying that,
Yes.
And it's always funny. And at the end of the day, that probably comes from that training we get in NLP, as you say, pace, lead, and also having the outcome that you want those people to be in a resourceful state. Doesn't need to be explicit about getting into resourceful states. It's, as long as the outcome is that those people look like they've, shifted, they feel more relaxed, they feel more connected. And maybe that experience, exploring what that feels like, is something they don't get to experience as a team very often. And that's maybe then, is that the state you'd like to be able to experience as a team? Is quite an interesting question probably for them to explore. So let's take that energy stuff. What happens when, let's play with the concept of energy. What happens when the energy fields get contaminated, both at a collective team level and at an individual level, for people who aren't maybe even aware of what's happening with their various energies? Maybe you can talk to that and some of the challenges that presents, particularly in high-powered jobs.
Mm-hmm. Well, when you say contaminated, that word in itself it implies that it's there's something in our energy field that we don't want. So I think, again, it's the body is the feedback mechanism. So if there's something that is your body is trying to tell you, this doesn't feel good, I'm not grounded, I'm not centered, and I'm no longer peaceful and calm. So it might be the body's emotions, that I'm, anxious, or I'm suddenly angry. The body is telling you something. There's information in those in emotions. It might be a physical thing in the body, that I'm getting sick, or I've got chronic back pain, or I keep getting the same illness or something like that. It's the body's trying to tell you give me attention here. Something's out of balance. And, even mentally, it might be that you can't sleep. The mental thoughts are going crazy. You've got OCD. That's, quite a common extension of mental sort of contamination, if you like. It's not so much contamination. It's out of balance. And with a team, I guess it sort of shows up more in the relationships, arguments between team members, maybe someone procrastinating. Procrastination is always coming from a root of fear. So, at the pure level of energy, this might be getting a bit too woo-woo for your listeners, Jerry, so I apologise in advance. But this is my belief. At the pure level of energy, there's really only an energy that's an energy of love, or an energy that's an energy of fear. And so often for me, knowing that model, not that I would share that, but knowing that model in my mind, it's very simple for me as a coach to often say, is that if you took that action, would it be coming from a place of fear, or would it be coming from a place of love? In the workplace, we wouldn't necessarily use that word. Maybe we'd use joy or compassion. As a leader, a top tip could be to just say, everything I'm going to do, is it coming from a place of fear, or is it coming from a place of, joy? I want to help this person, or I love to do this creative work.
Yeah, and that's fantastic advice.
It's very simple, but
paying attention to what's happening, and then that simple question: where is this coming from? A place of joy or love, or is it coming from something more likely to be fear?
Yeah,
and I guess you're also familiar with the work of Tony Schwartz and he's popularized the 4 energies of physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual. Coming up, Rebecca explains the role consciousness plays in dealing with what life throws at us. Do you have this deep interest in consciousness and how consciousness affects our ability as leaders? So can you explain to us a little bit, or explain to our listeners how that works in practice, and maybe give some examples from your experience of coaching people who have had that awakening? I guess there's a point when they realize, oh my God, this is meaningful.
Yes, I mean that's often a benchmark for coaching, which is to get your client at some point to realize that they are creating their own problem. So I coached someone just this morning, actually, CFO, and she was feeling very stressed and overwhelmed at work. And I said, okay, tell me more. And as she was talking, I was realizing that she was taking on much more responsibility than was just her job. And she was doing that from a place of fear, unconscious to her, but a place of fear that it wasn't going to get done if she didn't do it. No one else would do it, or if they did, they wouldn't do it, good enough. So actually, consciousness, it starts with just self-awareness. It starts with self-responsibility, just saying, she was wanting to blame, her boss and what was happening there in the field outside of her. And that's all well and good, but it keeps you stuck because you can't change anything outside of you. You can't change another person. You can't change the fact we're in lockdown. Everything outside of us is really out of our control. All you can change is how you react to it. It's the classic Viktor Frankl message. So even the moment where clients realize that is so, so powerful, because once you realize, actually, you don't need to try and change anything else. You can just change how you're viewing this. That, for me, is consciousness. It's shifting your level of consciousness out of the victim, I'm victim to everything that's happening around me, into, the player, the person that has the power to make a different play. So that would be a consciousness. And then I use a model by Richard Barrett at Value Centre. I'm a consultant for valuecentre.com. They work with organisations to help change organisational culture. But you can also apply that model to an individual. So if we're talking about an individual, there's a model of 7 levels of consciousness, and we go through, not everyone will in a lifetime even go through all 7 levels, but I'm looking at what level of consciousness is my client currently operating from in their mind. And sometimes this isn't really coaching, but sometimes I will do a guided sort of grounding with them. And then when they're in that space, I obviously ask them permission first to try on a different mindset. And I just talk to them from a different level of consciousness, a higher level of consciousness. And that can often just be a breakthrough for them. They're like, wow, if I saw it like that, then I'll do this. Then it's not even a problem anymore. It's quite often what I hear.
So that's one of the big benefits, is when this inner awareness makes you maybe even more aware of how to tackle these outer factors that at some point maybe some people think just beyond them, right?
Yeah, I mean, every problem really isn't really a problem. It's just the outside world shining a light on where you haven't yet developed. You know, that's like the ultimate. If you live life with that mindset, then you'll be very powerful as a leader. And often they get to coach other people, leaders. So I've got a 6-week online course teaching leaders how to be coaches. It's not giving them a professional coaching certificate. They don't need to be my level of coaching. But more and more, I think leaders are going to have these skills of coaching their own teams so that their teams can do the work and the leader can shift up into more strategic, bigger picture stuff. So understanding these levels of consciousness also helps them then coach others as well.
Yeah, we're seeing more and more about the manager as coach. I'm seeing more and more courses about that. And of course, various leadership models, like the situational leadership model, has coaching built into it. And that's going back 30 more years ago, where they recognized the need for that. I guess there's always going to be a challenge there as to there's still a view, possibly sometimes influenced by the sports world, where coaching is yelling at people and telling them what to do because you're supposed to know how to keep them motivated. And I don't think we're talking about that. We're talking about helping people realize their own potential and being that sort of facilitator, guide, holding a space for them.
Mm-hmm. But that is also the purpose of helping them do all of that, is to help them be really highly motivated and therefore bringing their natural energy into work every day so that you've got a really, really high-performing team. Ultimately, that's what all my work pretty much is going to helping an individual leader or a team or an organisation be high-performing in whatever category, whatever goals they set themselves. So it's I'm in the business of high performance, really. But these are just all, if you look at the classic coach of shouting at someone to motivate them, we know innately that doesn't work. So on my online leadership course, there is a module on how to motivate your staff, and actually how you motivate someone is you ask them, what do you love? What do you love to do? What brings you energy in this work? And try and give them much more of that. Try and align people to what they're naturally wanting to do and loving to do, and probably very good at doing. So it's all connected, really.
Yeah. I work with a concept called enjoyment performance theory, and
exactly.
It's amazing how effective it is. And I guess just a slight, let's just take that out to this big challenge that organizations seem to have. And I'm pretty sure that you might have an answer to this whole idea that people aren't engaged at work. And what role does energy play in that? Everything.
If I'm not engaged, what that means is I'm not really bringing much energy. That is the definition of it. Not putting my thoughts, my focus of attention on this thing. And actually in my body, I'm probably not in a very resourceful state. And yeah, engagement is a major issue. I think the key to engagement, if you put yourself in those people's shoes, what do you love? I would love to have a leader that really, honestly, genuinely is curious about who I am and what special gifts I might have to bring and how those gifts can actually help this organisation perform. And they might, creatively come up with a whole new job title or a whole new area where they say, do you know what, this person's got this. Let's get them doing that. That would really benefit the organisation. What we've got is an old-fashioned structure that describes the role before the person joins. And they say, well, here's the fixed role. Do you want it or not? And most people if you like 80% of your job, you're doing really, really well. Most people don't even like their job at all. And they come to work, the bits of their day that they put high energy to is maybe the social, because they like certain people. But yeah, it's also got to have a belief that I carry, which is that almost everyone wants to do a good job. I don't think anyone comes to work to say, I want to come to work and be 30% engaged, 70% disengaged, and make a few mistakes and go home. That's not what we want. So we're beyond, when I work with organisations on culture, that's one of the major things that we're trying to release the latent potential in their organisation, which is if they're 40% engagement rate, that's 60%. If you think of your payroll, one of the measurements I use is I say, what's your annual payroll? And if you've got 40% engagement, you're wasting 60% of that payroll. You might as well just burn that money. So it's got a very high impact on business if you work with engagement in that way.
Yeah. And taking your point about people don't come to work to do a bad job, and if they're spending most of their time doing stuff that doesn't really get their energy levels to a good space, it's really they'd prefer to be doing something else with their life, wouldn't they, if they could be paid for it. Mm-hmm. We're working with tools ourselves, just to share with you, where we're also, this concept that engagement has to be done to people. We have to engage people. Mm-hmm. Companies spend millions and millions mm-hmm. every year trying to engage their people. And actually, it's a do-with process, really. Mm-hmm. It's not about the manager trying to engage their people or not. And we're working with tools which go to the individual level of engagement by measuring enjoyment, performance, and then using those tools to facilitate the conversation between managers and their people to explore what that means in their job. Maybe there's somebody else on the team who really enjoys the stuff that this person hates, and it's only a question of being aware of it and then saying to the other person, would you like to do a bit more of this? And maybe we can get you to do something else in your role. So it's a fascinating area, and I think and I still struggle in my own head what prevents many organizations. And I mean, when I say that, of course, we don't mean many organizations. It's the people in organizations. This concept of the organization decides, really, it's people who decide. Mm. There seems to be sometimes a mental block. Maybe it's a fear to go there or something. But they put up with a lot of low engagement mm-hmm. in their surveys, and yet, I guess what you said earlier when you shared this idea about energy, the answers are probably not that difficult to get at, So.
No, but I think a lot of the people that I work with are leaders that want to be engaged themselves. So they aren't just turning up to work, forcing themselves to do a job they don't really like, swallowing all of the political rubbish from people that are, shouting at them or, putting things on them. They don't want that life. So they come to me for themselves primarily. And I always say, as a leader, if you want your people to be engaged, you have to be engaged. If you want to have them be inspired, you have to be inspired. So you have to embody the energy that you want for your team, because it's contagious. When you walk in as a leader, the state that you're in and your mindset actually is contagious to all of those around you. So that's really, it's a very simple example of saying you don't have to change the outside world. You don't have to change those people in your team. You have to just change yourself and be authentically engaged in what you're doing in your job, and to connect to why you're doing it. I think meaning and purpose is becoming really, really important as well. That when you feel I'm making a meaningful contribution, in some way, you could work in customer service and you say, I'm helping these customers, and it feels great when they get off the phone and they've got a solution, and they come on the phone angry and upset, and they get off the phone with me calm and happy and have a way forward. That's a meaningful contribution. So it doesn't have to be saving the world, but when I'm working with people, so I have private clients as well, and often those private clients are either leaders in organisations where the organisation won't fund their coaching, or they want to fund it themselves because they're not sure they even want to stay with this organisation. So ethically, they want the freedom to talk about everything, and possibly, I do career coaching to help them move from one company to the next, or set up their own, or whatever it is. But that is a lot of the very senior leaders in these big organisations where there's a low engagement. Those leaders are not even thinking that they could be engaged in their job. They're all on automatic pilot, doing their duty, doing what they should do, getting the pension, getting the salary, paying their mortgages, their kids' school fees. They've signed up for that life unconsciously. So people in that organisation have got no chance of having high engagement if the leaders aren't even expecting high engagement of themselves.
Yeah. This is a theme that's coming out of these conversations around, it really starts with the leader's self-awareness, and that self-awareness is probably ends up producing choices. Like you say, the private clients, they're often exploring whether they should stay where they are. And it's these choices that, perhaps that's great advice, actually. I think any leader listening to this, don't start talking about how engaged your team is. Start looking at yourself and how do you feel about the job you're doing? How do you feel about your own levels of motivation? And are you inspiring yourself every day when you get up? Or is it the drudgery of just, running that hamster wheel as much as you can? In this final part of our conversation, we visit the topic of burnout and resilience. And Rebecca provides some useful tips that we can all use. Yeah. And this actually nicely brings us to a topic that I know that we were going to explore, and that is when all these things become too much. And we have seen this as an emerging trend in recent years, where this concept of burnout tends to be an end result. And I often think it's very sad because it is really becomes an extreme end of a state that a person has been in. And I often think, wouldn't it be great if people could just recognize that before it happens and take the steps? So talk to me a little bit about, I'm pretty sure you've come across leaders where you've been brought in, or you've seen it emerge, that this is where they're heading for a train wreck or whatever you want to call it. And just talk to us a bit about that and what you've noticed can help somebody if they're listening to this today, particularly given the year it's been in 2020. We're recording this just about to go into 2021. Yeah. And it's not been an easy year, even for the best, the best minds and the best gurus out there. So what could you say to leaders out there, particularly if they're feeling very overwhelmed and stressed?
Yeah, it's a brilliant question and very timely, because I'm being asked more and more to come in, not under the guise of high performance and leadership coaching, but under the guise of well-being, to help leaders identify what are the signs that someone in your team has, got some emotional or mental health issues. How do you pick that up early? So I think going back to your question, if you are a leader, if it's for everyone really. The key thing is to know, when am I at my edge? What are the indicators for me that tell me that I'm at my edge? Actually, one step before that is to know that you have an edge. When the military train their soldiers who might get captured in enemy territory on interrogation, they train them to hold out as long as they can and then collapse and then give in and tell the information, because they know that it's almost impossible under, interrogation conditions that these soldiers are in, that they will break down. So first, it's acknowledging we all will break down at some point. None of us are superheroes. And then it's knowing, for me personally, what are the signals that tell me, I'm run down physically, I'm maybe getting close to my edge emotionally or mentally. So for me, I get ulcers in my mouth. And when I get like a tiny little ulcer in my mouth, I'm like, I'm getting run down. So it'll be different for each person. It might be that you get really bad back pain and you have to take 2 tablets instead of 1, or that you're not sleeping too well, or that actually it might be an emotional charge where you just shout at your kids, or, it could be depression where you really cannot get yourself out of bed on the weekend. You just spend all day in bed. So anything for you that is, you go, that's my edge. Now's the sign coming. I need to take notice of that. Then the next thing to do would be really to know, how do I uniquely bring my energy back into my body? Because basically what's happened at an energetic level is you have exhausted your energy. You've depleted your energy base for various different reasons. So what is it for you that brings energy back into the body? It might be going for a walk in nature. You might want to try and download some of the meditation apps like Calm, Buddhify, sitting still, trying to meditate. It might be breath work, or people like cooking. It's going to be a range of things. If you play a musical instrument, maybe drawing, but something that you say, oh, when I do this activity, it calms me down, it brings me energy, and it renews my feel for life. To know what they are. Some people I coach, they don't even know what that is, and they'll say, well, I go for a run, but you realize their run is just another way to, push themselves and drive themselves. So that's number 2. And then I guess the other thing is really a bigger picture holistically is, do what you love. What is it that brings you joy and energy in your job? Who are the people you love to work with? Do a list of the people, the things, the places that bring me lots of energy, and the people, the places, the tasks that deplete my energy. Again, it's just becoming more self-aware. And how do I, long-term, for sustainability, how do I make sure I get more of the list that brings me energy and less of the list that depletes my energy?
Yeah, so it's this, we're back to self-awareness again. It's that concept of a contrast frame. You need to know when your energy is high.
Yeah.
What makes it that way? I'm being a bit generalizing here. And the same way, when your mobile phone battery is charged, it's green, and then it might go yellow.
Yeah.
And then it goes red, and you look for a charger.
Yeah.
And I use this metaphor. And if you've traveled enough for business, you'll know that not every charging device and plug point in the world is the same. So,
yes.
So if you leave it to this red, it can be a bit too late. Most of us would tend to put our phone on the battery when we start to get the yellow signs. Yes, we have the odd moment. And yet it seems to be quite a challenge for people to have these little, this is not rocket science, a lot of it. It really is common sense, practical stuff. Yet there's a tendency to not think of it that way. There's this sort of, how am I going to know? It's just, you don't understand the workplace I'm in. It's crazy, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, I think, sorry to interrupt, Jerry. I think a lot of what happens is other thoughts come into the mind. And these thoughts are from our conditioning as children, that, I am responsible. I have to make sure this project goes over the line. Fear-based energy. If I don't, my boss won't be happy. I'll get sacked. maybe unconsciously, I'm a caretaker. So when I'm home, I take care of everybody as well, especially for women. That's how we're raised, to be the caretakers. So there's lots of unconscious thought patterns that are running that keep someone thinking they have no other options. And that's really what coaching is about. That self-awareness is to surface those unconscious patterns, so that then you have a choice. You can say, well, actually, I didn't even put that thought in there. That's not, I don't even agree with that. Why should I be responsible for getting this project over the line? I can't be. There's 50 other people on this project. I'm responsible for being a great leader. And have I been a great leader today? Yes, I have. That's it. Then go home, switch off.
And you mentioned an important word. You mentioned Frankl earlier, Viktor Frankl, which is, anybody who hasn't read the book is certainly worth reading. It's not easy to read, particularly the first part, and still it's a great book. But one of the things that Frankl came up with was this word choice. And what was coming into my mind there when you were just explaining this was there might be people out there who say, but you just don't understand. Life is hell at the moment. What do you mean I have to look at what I enjoy and think about maybe I shouldn't be here when the world is falling apart and there's no jobs. And so you taking that idea of choice, what words of consolation or what help could you give somebody to help them reframe their situation if they're feeling that sense of it's hopeless? What sorts of things could you say to somebody like that?
I think we can feel that we're trapped in life, and maybe when we wake up, we have trapped ourselves and we realize that, and that can be very, very scary, and you need professional support through that. So I would, for those people that are really feeling hopeless, then I want to offer a free coaching session, Jerry, for anyone that's listening to this that says I need help now. Then just reach out, but I still go back to the premise that if that person was my client, I would be helping them realize that they have unconsciously created the life that they find themselves in. That might not be a life of freedom of choice right now, but it's better to wake up now at 30, at 40, at 50, and to make some different life choices going forward. So I'm quite often working with executives actually that want to get out of the corporate world altogether. I had a client who wanted to buy a vineyard and make wine. I mean, they were very wealthy. They'd been a very senior exec, so we don't all have those choices. But, to say, okay, right now I do have to keep this job, but I still have a choice of what state I'm in as I go through this job. I don't have to be resentful and feeling trapped because now I've got a plan. That might take 5 years, but I am going to have a different life. I'm going to get out of this. Or now I've realized that I'm really stressed because, I've got a boss that's emotionally abusive. I can change jobs, or I can go to HR, or everything that you become aware of gives you a choice. So I'd say if people are feeling really stuck and I have no choice, actually just do some work with a coach or anyone to help you become more self-aware. And I don't know what content will surface, but out of that self-awareness, that's the power. There's huge power in self-awareness, because then you can say, oh, wow, I don't have to, I've got a choice now and I could do it this way.
Right. And I guess if we chunk that up to the key message there is reach out to somebody.
Yes.
And maybe just talk it through, because you never know what can come out of that, rather than sitting there suffering alone.
Absolutely.
There's always somebody. You'd be amazed at how much compassion there is out there.
Yeah.
A lot of us, we don't. Here's the thing: a lot of people don't realize that other people are suffering. So it's, and when you tell them, they're very quick to go, oh my God, I didn't realize that. Would you like to talk it through? And that's a very generous offer. And I mean, I know you're not going to go off and give hours and hours of coaching, but I can tell you I'm pretty sure, and I know this from my own experience, that it could be that 15 minutes, it could be that one question that could help you as a listener, get just to start that process of getting yourself unstuck and being able to move forward, because being able to move forward is quite an important part of this, having somewhere that you want to go to, even if it's only in the short term. Yeah.
And that's a choice right there. You can reach out or you can stay suffering. So I think that's the first choice, isn't it?
So I'm really curious, Rebecca, whether your inbox fills up in the next few weeks.
Yeah, I don't mind.
After this goes out.
I love my work. It's not so much work for me, it's the calling, and I am doing my own practice every day. So I am coming with good, grounded, calm energy, and the space is there, and this is what I'm meant to be doing. So, I'm happy if it gets filled up.
Yes, and if yours gets filled up, then they can always come to me. And,
yes, if I can't manage, I'll send them over to you, Jerry.
Genuinely, if anybody out there wants to have that short conversation, at least just to get some different perspective.
No, that's brilliant.
I would join you.
Thank you.
It's a very positive thing to do. And just to touch on this topic, because you mentioned the role of women earlier, and a lot has been talked about and written about this year, and even up before COVID, about firstly the emergence of women in leadership and the impact they've been having over the last even 10 years, going back even to the financial crisis. And yet you mentioned this caregiver, a lot of women are said to have been affected quite strongly by the COVID thing because of their traditional roles that they've played in that. What are your observations on women in leadership, and particularly the work you've done with any women, and any last advice you could give now before we finish?
It's a really good question, and there is a theme. I mean, I work with several very senior women. I'm working right now with some very senior women who are working from home, and the children will always come to the woman. The husband's working from home as well, but the woman is still taking on more than her share of the domestic chores and raising the children. And I think this is a theme for now. We're in massive social transition, so we've come a long way, and it feels like the traditional men's world of business, the doors are open to women, and women have chosen whether I want to go in that world or not. But the doors of the traditional woman's world of staying at home and caring for the home and the food and the children, that hasn't become fully socially acceptable for a route for men to take. So it's not really, men don't have the choices really socially that women do. So I think until we get genuine equality, where it doesn't matter what your gender is, there's two people in it together, and they need to keep a house going, raise some kids and earn some money, and how you do that between you is completely up to you, then I think we're going to have this legacy of women unconsciously having been conditioned to take care of the house and the children and do their job. Again, self-awareness of that gives them a choice, gives them different conversations to have with their partner. It's the conditioning is very, very strong for a mother. That's what I can say. It's a very tough one to say, I'm just going to, try and not do all of the stuff that I'm also doing. I mean, I think that's partly why we don't have women at such senior leadership roles. Many of the women that I coach could get to CEO or C-suite level, and they say, I just can't do it because I've got to pick up my kids from school. If they're sick, I'm the one that stays home. I've still got to run the house. And they don't want a life where they've got more stuff in it. There's hardly any space for them at all.
So, Rebecca, to end on an upbeat note, what are your hopes and wishes for 2021, and particularly the role of leaders in 2021 taking us forward based on 2020?
Well, I think that 2020 has been a great opportunity for many people to reflect and for many organisations to do things differently. So I think maybe some of the transformation that's happened in 2020, because it's had to, has been transformation that might have taken 5 or 10 years, and they've just done it in a year. So I think there's a brilliant platform that a lot of organisations are now have built, and they're going into 2021 with that platform. For leaders personally, I hope that leaders, if they're listening to this, they're already, advanced leaders. They're already interested in this whole topic of self-awareness and self-development. So I would just encourage leaders to stay connected with their bodies, listen to their signals, and find the work that they love, feel inspired themselves, and, just really have the courage to explore their real truth, become self-aware, and own it. Make some choices from that space, if that makes sense.
Yep, perfect sense. So Rebecca Watson, thank you very much for sharing all your wisdom and tips today.
Thanks, Jerry.
I'm looking forward to 2021.
Yeah, me too. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode. You will find details of what we covered in the show with links, etc. in the show notes. Please share your key takeaways from today's guest and let your friends and colleagues know about the podcast. Oh, and if there's a particular author or leading thinker you'd like me to interview, just get in touch and I'll do my best to get them on the show. This episode was brought to you by Wide Circle, helping you make better talent decisions. To learn more, visit widecircle.eu. That's WIDECIRCLE.eu. Until next time.